Thank you for joining us so early in the morning. We appreciate it. We know it's been a rough night for some of you. So joining us today are Niha from Safe, Mark from Fuse Network, Derek from ZeroDev, Pedro from Wallet Connect, and Cody from Base. So we're here to talk about Ethereum user experience. Account abstraction is getting a lot of attention lately, and that's because we're trying to solve something that anybody who's been using Ethereum for a long time knows is a big challenge, which is user experience. There's always this trade-off between user experience and security and trying to kind of juggle the two in the right way. And it feels like we're on the right path, but there's still a lot of things to tackle, especially as we start looking at cross-chain. Now we have this new kind of challenge. We need L2s, we need rollups for scaling, but on the other hand, users, they need to start knowing which chain they're on and how to switch between networks and doing bridging and all kinds of things that, even as a technical user, it's sometimes daunting to do. So that's not really an option if we're talking about mainstream users. So we gather here, a lot of people who are dealing with this on a daily basis to kind of talk about these topics and see where it leads us. So I'll start with kind of like an open-ended question. There are obviously many hurdles to user experience in the space. But in your eyes, what is currently either like the biggest or most important or like most pressing hurdle for mainstream adoption?
Sure. Is this working? Yeah. Hey. This may be like not entirely specific to AA, but I think funding is currently a big challenge for our users, at least, getting users' wallets funded in the first place. So, AA is great for onboarding users, and it's a pretty seamless transaction experience, but I think we need to get to a space where native funding is a lot easier using things like debit cards or Apple Pay, like have it be simple to do just-in-time funding for transactions. Because especially as embedded wallets can fragment users' funds, I think we just need a better solution there.
I'm a little biased. I think the funding isn't really necessarily a wallet problem. I think it's a blockchain problem. I know it's not a wallet panel, but that's how my brain works. And I think on the wallet side, which actually influences the user experience the most, the account management is still the biggest problem. And we kind of have fragmented ourselves because obviously it's a decentralized network and there's no single product manager overseeing everything. There's like thousands. And we need to kind of coordinate that accounts now are very fragmented, and reaching truly universal accounts is going to be a problem. Like mobile wallets have one version of it, like MPC has one version of it, browser wallets are kind of the first type of wallets, and then embedded wallets come and then they do something completely different, and now accounts are just completely fragmented in different types. And all of these wallet types should just be the same instance of the same account. There should be just one universal account. Sure, you can create multiple accounts because you want a DGen, a gaming one, a social one, or whatever. But the account design needs to be truly universal across all chains, across everything.
Yeah, I think if we are talking about the obstacles to adoption, I think we can talk about the adoption of crypto in general and then the adoption of AA, which are two different things, right? So the adoption of crypto in general is actually, in my opinion, not primarily blocked by the lack of UX, which there is, right? But rather by the lack of super compelling on-chain use cases, right? So I think throughout the history of tech, whenever a tech is solving a great problem, it doesn't really matter how hard it is to use, people try to use it, right? So the fact that there are still so few people on-chain right now, I think is primarily because there are still a very big lack of super compelling on-chain use cases. If you are talking about the obstacle of adopting AA, I think the biggest, I think the single biggest obstacle is just the fact that today it is impossible to use account abstraction on a wallet you already use, such as MetaMask, right? So despite all the benefits of AA, no one wants to move all their assets, from their ledger, from their MetaMask into a new wallet. So, and that's why, I think everyone here is super excited about 7702, right? Which will finally bring the benefits of AA to the average crypto user. Yeah.
Works. So I think that we don't have a technology problem. We have a business problem, and specifically trying to, I think in this cycle, relative to the last cycle, things became a little bit more product-led. In the last cycle, it was primarily developer-led. And I think, now we see signs of actually trying to solve the business problem of getting users in, growing the pie. And I think the protocol is not like the main question for why should we adopt, this technology or that technology. Trying to do like the perfect protocol is not necessarily a way to sell to customers. I think we're at this point where things are complicated enough to hide them under the hood.
So I think like the best products out there make people's lives simpler. And unfortunately, at the moment with blockchain or crypto, it's actually making people's lives harder. And I agree with Derek here. We need more solid, compelling use cases, which actually people want to use of the crypto network. And at the moment, like if somebody really wants to use crypto, they would go through the hurdles of getting the gas, they would go through the hurdles of setting up an account. And these are the people who maybe want to make a quick money, maybe, but we need more compelling use cases.
Okay, thank you for that. And so, yeah, there's also, I think, it could also be said that it's kind of like a chicken and an egg problem in some sense. Yes, I agree there's not the business case, but sometimes maybe someone did create a compelling business case and the UX was just so terrible that nobody could use it. And personally, I think that maybe the one thing that, for what Derek said, that even if the UX is terrible, people will still do it if it provides them value. So I guess that's DeFi right now, right? Because I mean, like, people were even trading like an Ether Delta back in 2017, even though it was really hard because they saw the value. But I want to expand a little bit on what Pedro said in terms of the account fragmentation, taking us a bit more to the UX. So that is something I'd love to hear your thoughts on, because one of the things I've noticed in the space is around embedded wallets. So we made it thanks to account abstraction. Onboarding now, like Cody said, is super smooth, right? It's like you use your fingerprint, you don't know about anything about private keys, you don't have gas with paymasters, everything really great. We got to the promised land. But now we introduced a different problem, is this kind of like wallet fragmentation, right? We're fragmenting identity, we're fragmenting liquidity. I'm just wondering, what is your take on that in terms of like, what do we do about that? If anything, it can be done. That bad, huh?
Thank you for the mic. I'm going to go a little bit back to the compelling use cases before I talk about the account fragmentation. Maybe I'm just being a little too pragmatic, but like even if we just cancel everything in the roadmap and we just put DeFi, like Ethereum is going to be DeFi and nothing else, that for me is already a compelling use case. I'm obviously going to be biased by my background in fintech, but we do everything like 10x better, and you need to be 10x better to justify a user to switch. But we're thinking too much from like, oh, it is 10x better as an offering, but the accessibility means that you have to climb a mountain with a backpack full of rocks, and it's going to be good when you get to the peak. And that kind of scares people away, because the reason all of these banks actually own all of finance is because you can just go downstairs and like open a bank account, even though they have a terrible experience at the end. So I don't think we need compelling use cases. We already have compelling use cases, but we have to ask people to climb a mountain. And in the account of fragmentation, I think it plays a big role into that. Like if you're telling people that like, oh, your account is one thing here and another thing here, and then I'm offering you the whole world of Ethereum, but actually it's fragmented at the wallet level, then the whole composability offering of Ethereum was gone. And we might as well just go back to siloed apps. Because yes, we did not silo apps at the blockchain layer, but we did silo it at the wallet layer, and the user lives in the wallet layer. So for them, it is siloed. There's no composability. Like we broke the composability at the wallet. So we can scale and make interoperability between the chains, but the wallets are fragmented, period. Like the user doesn't feel the composability anymore.
And you feel like that's, do you have any ideas on maybe how we can maybe tackle this?
I spend, I don't know if you guys seen my Twitter account, but I write more tweets about ERCs than even about Wallet Connect. Maybe I should write more about Wallet Connect, but like I think ERCs are the way to go. Like everything that you work in your job, whether you're a designer or product or engineer, maybe not in the other departments, can be an ERC. Like you can literally make an ERC out of everything. That's the beauty of it. And the beauty of an ERC is that, as I mentioned to you, like there's no product manager in the whole Ethereum ecosystem. Everyone is their own product manager in a way. But by writing an ERC, we can share the scope of the project together, and we can write the project scope, and we can project manage together. But if everyone is writing in their little Notion docs or Apple Notes, like we're not going to get there. Like everyone is just kind of like siloing the information and have split roadmaps.
I feel like I feel like this is something that we can talk for a long time about, you know, and but basically like, okay, so you know, I know we are talking about UX, right? You know, but since you mentioned ERCs, you know, so I think personally I feel like we also have like a ERC fragmentation problem, right? Just like wallet fragmentation, right? Which is that I feel like, you know, like I'm all for ERCs, you know, I'm obviously, you know, part of like some ERCs as well, but I do feel like sometimes we have the tendency to standardize too early. I think standardizing too early is just as dangerous and just as bad as standardizing too late, right? Because you are what's the word? You're like ossifying a particular approach before the market, like before a particular solution has even been proven on the market, right? So I feel like, you know, like even in AA, you know, like you see things about modular smart accounts, where it's like there's like, you know, a bunch of different competing standards because people try to standardize too early, right? You know, and then like the products who actually got traction later, after the first ERC was proposed, felt the need to then propose their own ERC because they actually had a traction, right? So I feel like sometimes like when you do ERCs ahead of traction, you actually like you might think you're solving the fragmentation problem, but you're actually creating a deeper fragmentation problem early because now you have like different projects fighting between different ERCs. So personally, I actually think that we should try to find a balance between, you know, obviously like trying to create interoperability between the solutions, but also not try to kind of like, you know, try to enshrine some approach too early before the solutions have actually been played out on the market. So that's on the ERCs. And then on the, back to your original question about
Fragmentation.
the fragmentation between wallets, right? Yeah. So personally, I'm not too concerned about the fragmentation between embedded wallets because of two reasons. So one is that like I work very, you know, like our company Zero Dev works very closely with the leading embedded wallets players, right? Like Privy, Dynamic, blah, blah, blah. So I know as a fact that they're all exploring and trying to build global wallet solutions, right? So by global wallets, I mean, you know, wallets you can take to other dApps, wallets that will, you know, be the same across different dApps. So I think like they are trying to solve the problem, and like, you know, and that's possible, by the way, like, you know, like thanks to a lot of like the innovations in account abstraction, especially session keys, right? Because if you want to use the same wallets across different applications, but then still have, I guess, but then still be able to provide security guarantees for the user, you need session keys to isolate the wallets between different applications, right? You know, so that's been helpful. And then like the second reason why I'm not worried about it is because I think I always see embedded wallets as just a temporary solution, right? You know, so sorry, like not a temporary solution in the sense that they won't be around in the future, but rather in the sense that I see them as just like the first step in a user journey, right? So I think like people, they get on board this with embedded wallets, but they would then be at some points be onboarded to a actual standalone wallet, right? So I feel like once again, you know, 7712 comes out, and once like the standalone wallets actually become smart accounts, I think we won't be worrying about the fragmentation problem as much, you know, just because people will actually have standalone AA wallets that they can use.
I also agree that I think that there's no real fragmentation problem because the the pie is not getting bigger. And also we're confusing our investors as our customers. So I think that when we talk about account abstraction, we talk about actual consumers. Right now, the way people use blockchains, they need to understand what is the opportunity cost. They need to understand, a lot of technical jargon. And I don't think those people necessarily that complain about fragmentation or complain about, UX are necessarily the actual end user. They're the investors, there are people that are maybe more technical, and there's like a big herd that is following the technical people and the investors. So, and the pie over the last year didn't grow that much. So if the pie grows and new customers will come, and actual consumers don't pay for gas, and they don't also want to learn, or, we don't want to create new habits, we want to give them the habits they know already. So it's a totally different type of customer that we don't have in crypto right now at a large scale yet.
So I think there are like two parallels running here, one for the ERC fragmentation, one on the wallet UX, embedded wallets. So maybe if I touch on the embedded wallet side, I think the UX that it offers for Web 2 users or new users to crypto is pretty good. Like you enter an app, you don't have to worry about downloading some browser extension or having some app on your phone. You're in the environment of an app, you sign up, you have a wallet, boom. Pretty sweet, right? Maybe for crypto native users, this is not what we expect. We want to be more in control of our funds. But people out there don't really think like that. They actually trust in the app that they use, unlike us, who are like skeptical of everything. So I think like I would put my bets on embedded wallets. I think they will get better, and probably one of the ways in which we can improve crypto UX. On the other parallel that's running on fragmentation, standardization is pretty good. And I think there are several standards out there which point towards the same outcome, but different philosophies. And that also creates fragmentation. So it's like a inception of standardization and fragmentation. And how do you come out of it? Like buy-ins, like you either work on these standards together, or you lobby outside of these standards, which is also happening. But it kind of creates a toxic, almost a toxic or a very competitive environment in which you want your standard to win. And that's quite a zero-sum game, in my opinion.
Actually, I want to just respond to that, just 1 second. I think that actually sometimes competition is good, and it actually speaks to what Derek said about the kind of like pre-designing everything in advance. Sometimes this competition between 2 or 3 competing standards, I think, can breed good. I guess it's all about how it's done, right? It can be toxic, it can be positive. Sometimes people want their standard to win because they have monetary gain from it. Sometimes it's very ideological because they truly believe that this is the correct way. Doesn't mean they're right, by the way. It's still, but you're right. It depends on how it's done. But sorry, Cody or Derek, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I think like I just want to clarify my stance in that, like I'm of course not against ERCs, and I also don't fault people for creating ERCs early, right? I think their intentions are good. What I'm trying to say is that I feel like as a space, I feel like we should do a better job at not shaming companies who don't appear to be embracing ERCs immediately, right? Because like sometimes like I see a lot of like finger pointing whenever like there's a company who's building something not on top of like some open standards, and then people are like, oh, like why you're not building on top of ERC, blah 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 blah. But sometimes the reason is just because they are trying to iterate, right? Like they are trying to build the best solution for the customers first, for the users first, to try to prove out their solutions first before they make a ERC, right? So I just feel like sometimes it's not so much that it's not like the problem is not just that people are creating ERCs early. It's that like there's almost like this community pressure of like just like shaming projects who don't appear to be super enthusiastic about the existing ERCs and not embracing them immediately. So that's my point.
Yeah, no, I think I agree with Derek here. I think there's a constant balance you have to strike between trying to meet these standards, but also, you know, ship value to your users immediately. Like we only have so many resources to build things. So yeah, we have concerns around, or I'm concerned a little bit around embracing these standards too early, and instead of just building features that our users need right now.
Sorry for shaming ERCs. I'm super guilty. I literally do that all the time, and I don't even do it privately. I do it very publicly. Like, I really push really hard and aggressively to everyone to write a standard or to use a standard. Like, I hope that wasn't like very targeted, but literally, it's really important that people understand that the process of ERCs is incredibly malleable. It's not something static. It's not something that you can, and I think you touched something really interesting. Like, is an ERC an outcome or a philosophy? And I think people get too caught up that an ERC is a specific approach rather than a specific outcome. Like, some ERCs that I've worked with have changed like 4 or 5 versions. Like, if you go through the GitHub history, it looks nothing like it, version after version. But at least it had one number that everyone said, I am part of this ERC, I am sharing this ERC with the community. And one of the ways that has successfully happened this is people don't get too caught up of who are the offers. Like, the best ERCs out there have like 10 to 20 offers. The problem is when an ERC has like 2 or 3 offers. And then these 2 or 3 offers are saying, this is my ERC. And that basically becomes like a philosophical and almost like an ego journey rather than saying, we share this outcome. And I don't think you need to force your product to use an ERC, but I think your product needs to think that it will use an ERC and needs to be part of the journey early of the ERC so that you can comment and say, I don't like how this ERC is going. Here's my feedback from my own product experience. And then you participate. And if you do that, I would add you as an offer right away just because you made a comment. Like, because now this is our ERC. And I think the way people do ERCs is the problem, is not the ERCs themselves. There's stages, there's draft, there's review, there's final call. Like, there's a whole product management of the ERC, and some people kind of just take it a little too personal. This is my ERC.
And I just want to add, don't feel shy about continuing this subject, because I feel it touches on something which is very relevant to the advancement of UX in Ethereum, which is coordination, which is something that I think we can all agree is a challenge right now. But Derek, it seems like you have something you want to say, or I can continue. I thought you raised your hand. So let's take this opportunity about ERCs. Just one last thing, maybe. There are a lot of ERCs in this ecosystem which are very beneficial for UX. Some of the people here I think most of the people here are authors or involved in those ERCs on some levels. So I want to take this opportunity if each one of you can share one ERC that they think is really like interesting and important in the UX standard. I know some of you what your answers will be, but I don't know if everybody knows what your answers will be, so it's a good chance to kind of like maybe tell people about them. Just keep it short, right? Then this is not about getting on a soapbox and giving a 10-minute lecture on your ERC, but just share what you think is important right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll probably give a pretty obvious one, but 7702 is really important to us. Oh, is it not an ERC? Oh, man. EIP, shoot.
No, it can be an EIP as well. That's fine.
All right. We're going to go with 7702. Yeah, we just, there are a lot of users right now using EOAs that obviously we want to give them the benefits of AA. So we need to get those users migrated over. So.
I'll be the last one.
You go first.
I have a banal example, ERC20. We tried to kind of innovate a few years ago and use ERC667. And I think ERC20 is a good example of like simplicity and, you add complexity, you add hacks, people stole money, we had to revert back to ERC20. And it also shows that not the perfect protocol wins, or like not maybe the nicest. It's also about simplicity, and HTTP2 is trying to replace HTTP1 for like 2 decades already, and people settled for the good enough. So I think if Ethereum is like kind of the HTTP of money, there's some stuff that need to be bedrock, and some stuff that are a lot trial and error, and think this is like the advantage of permissionless innovation, but some things need to stay simple.
So, well, lately I have a crush on 7702 because it's like migrating all EOAs to smart accounts. But I think it started, UX started with 4337 for me because it enabled gasless payments, it enabled paymasters, bundlers, batch transactions, basically putting smart in accounts. I'm also a fan, I'm not super nice at remembering random numbers, but there's a ERC that gets wallet capabilities. Thank you. I like that one. That's from Wallet Connect. But I really like the concept. It makes developers' lives easier. So when we talk about UX, we should not only think about the users, but we should also think about developers, the product people, and that hits the nail on its head. So, yeah.
What's the name of the ERC with the plugins?
7579.
Yeah.
7579 and 6900, those are the two.
6900, yeah.
Like I think, like I don't remember the exact number, but I think there are starting to be attempts, I think actually also by like one of them is by Wallet Connect to solve a very important problem, which is the fact that as chain abstracted wallets becomes a thing, it's hard for the debt to correctly read the balance of the wallet, right? So if my wallet has 100 USDC on base, 7811 apparently, yeah. And then so if my wallet has 100 USDC on base, but then I'm connecting to a Polygon dApp, today there's no way for the dApp to know the fact that my wallet can actually pay the money even though it doesn't appear to have money on Polygon, right? So I think like there are a number of different approaches to solving this problem, so I think I'm generally excited. I'm generally excited about ERCs in that they try to solve that problem. Yeah.
I'm glad that everyone said a bunch of ERCs that I was gonna say, so I can say the last one in my list, which is 7715, which allows wallets to grant permissions for the app to actually act on the behalf of the wallets with certain policies that are enforced by the smart contract.
Yeah, so session, you mean like session keys in a sense?
Yeah, but more like smart sessions because it doesn't necessarily have to be keys.
Yeah, okay. Smart sessions, sorry. So going back to what Derek said about there's a question, but let's not derail necessarily. So going back to what Derek said about the fragmentation of assets, that's also a very interesting topic as we get to chain abstraction. I'm gonna move us away a little bit from ERCs. I think we talked about. So when we're talking about chain abstraction and this kind of like fragmentation of assets, so we've seen some interesting solutions come out of it, usually using the word magic. There's magic spend, and that's an interesting approach. What are your thoughts on, in general, about how do we solve this problem of, like what you said, Derek, that you go on one chain and you want to know how much balance you have on another chain, stuff like that.
Sorry, so the question is how do we solve which problem?
So the fragmentation of assets. I'm starting to shift a little bit more into talking about cross-chain.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's like a very active research area right now. I think a lot of teams, I think ZeroDev, one of them, is very actively exploring the approaches. But generally speaking, right, like the idea of a chain abstracted smart accounts is basically combining two technologies. So smart accounts and intent, right? So we are starting to have very fast intent-based / liquidity-based bridges, such as Across, Relay, blah, 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 that can, so it's like basically like fundamentally, like what these chain abstracted wallets are doing. I mean, not all of them, but a lot of them, like what they're doing is that they're essentially just bridging your assets through a liquidity bridge and then making the transaction, right? And because the liquidity bridge is so fast, your transaction time goes from maybe 2 seconds if it was on the same chain to maybe like 4 seconds if it's cross-chain, but it's still very much within the realm of what users are comfortable with, right? Yeah. So that's like the really high level, I guess, intro to how chain abstracted smart accounts work. But like there are many different approaches that I can dive into if we have time. Yeah.
So in this panel, I feel like there's a big focus on wallets, obviously, because of everyone who's involved. But chain abstraction actually comes with two problems. One is the authorization layer, which you just described on the attempts, and I think there's been some good work in there. But I think it's fundamentally blocked with like the actual asset fragmentation. So the liquidity layer is really hard to optimize, because even if you have like the best intent structure like in place and every wallet supports intents, like tokens are completely fragmented, and that's another source of fragmentation that needs to be solved. But I would say that everyone in this panel actually is not to fault for that, because it's out of scope of everyone else's project. Token fragmentation is something that needs to be solved at the bridge, blockchain, and token issuer layer, and that actually would make like intents substantially much easier to design, because every design with intents is really, really hard to do with like all of the token fragmentation, and whether the token is bridge or is a native token, and like if it's EVM or non-EVM, it becomes really, really hard. And that's something that is completely blocking. So when we think about the account abstraction, we really have to think single chain, because the moment it becomes multi-chain, there's multiple problems to solve. One of them being intents and account management across chain, but the token fragmentation is quite a heavy problem.
Just to clarify, like when we say token fragmentation, you're talking about the fact that for example for USDC there's like native USDC, USDC, like is it what we're talking about?
There's actually two problems to it, right? So when you think about the token, what do you guys think? A ticker. Like ticker is the thing that defines a token. So let's say USDC. How many USDCs are there? There should be only one, right? As a user, I only care about USDC. You don't go and think like how many types of euros or dollars or pounds exist. Like there's only one version of it. That's not true in blockchain. Like USDC, even though they did this massive upgrade for USDC v2, where they try to make it as native as possible across multiple chains, it's still not truly native. This is like probably the most interoperable token in this space, and it's still not native everywhere. So that means that in the tokens which is not native, there's like bridged versions of it, and for every bridged version of it, you could have multiple USDC versions in the same chain. So you don't even know if it has the same address, if it has the same liquidity, if it has the same risk assumptions, because it's bridged through different issuers. And this issuer bridge fragmentation causes like a token fragmentation.
So I think that one of the things that we're ignoring is like the reason L2s exist right now is because people want cheaper gas. But I think different types of customers will use different L2s, and there would be different types of transactions and different types of tokens. And I think some people want to move $1 million across continents, and they need the trust guarantees of an L1, and they need like to be the most close, like the most secure way to transfer value. And some other people want to pay, $5 for a coffee, and they want to be able to maybe reverse this transaction, and they need instant clearing. They don't want to put anything on chain, because what's the point of announcing a global settlement network that I bought coffee? So I feel like there's like a maximalist approach in crypto, where everything needs to be like. I think we had this debate in 2017 with private blockchains. It was this false dichotomy. Let's put everything on the blockchain. Let's put nothing. If it needs to be decentralized, nothing needs to be decentralized. And right now we're trying to find the sweet spot in the middle. But really, I don't see anyone talking about, off-chain transactions, really. When we're not even at this stage. I think we're at the layer 2. And what I'm talking about is layer 3, 4, 5, and finance is built by layers. So we're not even at the point where we actually need to address those issues yet. So that's my take. Like fragmentation is not really like a big problem until we have, all those use cases trying to work on the same L1, trying to settle to the same L1.
I think you're right that the motivation for the fragmentation was like cheaper gas and more accessibility for these tokens. But the actual problem was caused early on when we're designing everything around the blockchain and not around the asset. Because if you designed assets to be like a primitive of the blockchain, then they would actually be treated differently. Like, for example, with Ethereum, we have a very different use case. It's the native currency in pretty much all EVMs. So you do not have this problem with token fragmentation as much because it's treated as a special asset. Because tokens are treated just like any other smart contract. They end up inheriting all the problems that smart contracts have in fragmenting across chains. So if tokens are treated as a special class in the blockchain, you can still benefit from all the cheap or private versions of the token, but still have one canonical version of the token. And that actually is what caused the problem, even though the motivation for fragmentation was cheaper gas, privacy, and all of that.
I just want to add something else to the mix when we're talking about this fragmentation. There's also an additional fragmentation that comes about with smart contract wallets, which unfortunately this wasn't a problem with EOAs due to their simplicity, which is the key fragmentation as well. It's like now we have additional issues with the fact that you have to deploy the smart contract on each network, and if a network you haven't deployed it on, your key is, in a sense, could be still valid for it without your knowledge. So if you replace your key now, you have to replace it even on networks that haven't been created yet, and it's kind of like a funky situation. I'd love to hear your thoughts also on that. In addition, do you think that's also something that we'll solve with additional layers, or actually we have to go back to layer 1 and plus everything there, or a different L2, or what do you think about the key identity fragmentation as well, alongside everything else we've been talking about?
Yeah, I'll go real quick. Yeah, I think this is a big issue that we're seeing because users, the way a lot of smart wallets are built right now is just through a passkey that is inherent across all chains because it's when the account's deployed, like it's the owner on the account. But as you want to add new signers and whatever risk profile the user may have, they want to secure their account. We need to make sure that these signers are valid across all chains, which is a hard problem to solve. One thing that I'm excited about is minimal key store rollups that Vitalik has talked about too, where we can sync these changes across chains. I don't think we're there yet implementation-wise, but I think there's a pathway to get there.
Yeah, I think key stores are generally recognized to be the end game to solving that problem, right? So I think I actually been chatting about chatting with a few teams at Devcon who are working on key stores. My impression is that I think people are optimistic that by Q2 next year we'll have production ready key stores, right? So I think the one that Base is working on is actually one of the most promising solutions right now. Yeah. So once you have a key store, there won't be a problem. There won't be a problem anymore. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, I think key store rollups is definitely the answer. But each day, a new L2 is announced, and somewhere out there, somebody's still announcing an L2. And I think the one that brings it all together or converges everything will probably be a key store rollup. Hopefully, we don't mess it up again by changing the philosophy or something like that with key store rollups. But divided identity, I'm not sure if it's still 100% going to be solved with key store rollups, but definitely an effort in that direction, and something at SAFE we are very actively looking into.
One thing that I can add is that trying to imagine how 1 billion people using blockchains will look like, and trying to kind of reverse from that, reverse engineer from that, or it's really a difficult exercise. And I do think that L2s in the future would be sort of the equivalent of spinning up a server. You can buy or you can rent. So if you don't want to have your own dedicated infrastructure, then you can, just use a public cloud. And for open banking, it's a real big challenge to build public banking clouds. So I think that 1 billion people using blockchains probably means there's going to be a lot more. All the jobs we see today is Web 2. Product is a Web 2 concept. SEO promoters, didn't exist before Web 2. Community managers didn't exist before Web 2. Web 2 created a lot of new jobs that we didn't really imagine even 20 years ago. So I think that the problems that we think are the problems are not necessarily what we need to solve to get to 1 billion people. So that's my take. It's a bit abstract, but.
Yeah, I just want to like maybe add a few words about key stores. I think there are actually like two problems with key stores that are relatively unsolved. So one is like the economics of key stores, right? You know, like someone needs to be running the key store operator, you know, and since the key store rollup is going to be a ZK rollup, right? Like the cost of running it is not going to be trivial. So I think I still haven't met a team that's is building key store rollup, but also has like a good answer as to how they're going to make that to make keeping that key store rollup running economically sustainable. You know, so I'm just curious if like anyone, even in the audience, you know, who has some thoughts about it.
I mean, it's very hard to spin up a new blockchain, and even on L2. So we're basically kind of just bootstrapping as EVMs. But let's be honest, do we really need an EVM for a key store rollup? We don't. Like, we could make like the whole cost of a key store rollup like 10 times or 100 times cheaper if it's like a specialized machine that like virtual machine that literally just does key store mappings and management. Like, that is the solution. But as you said, like we have to work with what we have, and we'll use EVMs, and will cost like 100 times more than it's necessary. But then one day we'll realize, oh, we have like this rollup that runs 3 smart contracts. Just encode the 3 smart contracts into the actual like machine code. Like, go as close to the machine as possible, and don't do Turing complete like smart contracts. It's so unnecessary. So
you're saying basically, you know, hopefully like 10 years from now, this is just like an inherent cost. When anyone who's paying for a transaction, they're in a way subsidizing the key management of everybody or something like that, which I tend to agree, by the way, because that is something I tried to tackle back in like 2018, 2019 with Porous, and it just didn't make sense. Who's going to pay for this? The user won't pay for managing their keys, the dApps won't, who should? So you're saying the network should? No, like, I'm saying that the key store rollup, first of all, we're kind of like exaggerating the cost of a key store rollup. You only need to touch it every time you need to update it. Like, if you add a new device or if you add a new chain, that's when you actually need to touch the key store rollup. It's not like you need to touch it at every transaction.
But the point is exactly that since there are so few actual key updates operations, the sequencer, the operator of the rollup, is not going to make enough revenue to offset. But we just said we're going to do 1 billion users. That's a lot of key store updates. That's like, but even if it's not updating, just maintaining the data, keeping it high availability for everybody, and you know, there's even the security element around that. You know, you don't want to just. It needs to be on the network, which is there's a a financial motivation to keep it secure, because that's the best way to secure.
What if Fireblocks was a blockchain?
What Fireblocks was a blockchain? You gotta the.
Ooh, look at him, so happy. You wanna? He's so happy now.
I love that question.
I know Fireblocks likes it.
Yeah, for the audience back home, he said he loves that question. Okay, so do you guys want to keep talking?
I think that guy wants to say something.
Oh, sorry, yes. Yeah. You want to? Oh, okay.
I actually wanted to make like a weird plug pitch announcement thing. You were speaking earlier about EIPs and standards, and I always like to emphasize belligerently that EIPs are not standards even if they're final and implemented. Only node level EIPs become standards because they get hard forked in. Anything above is opt-in. It's never standardized. EIPs are just specifications that went through a process and got published. So UX ideas, user stories, mockups, flows can be EIPs. They can go through the document process.
ERCs.
They can be ERC is a subset. Anyways, they could be published as documents by the process. So you can use Ethereum magicians to put out user stories, multiple solutions to one problem, definitions of a problem. These are all things that you can do in the open, to design in the open, or to rally developers around an idea. Something becomes a standard when there are multiple competing companies or even entire ecosystems using the same design. But it being a final ERC doesn't make it a standard, it just makes it a design that was published. So I just, as the guy on ETH Magicians who reads every single thread about UX, just put UX in the title. I will see it. I will give feedback to anything about UX. Like, please design in public, everyone. Zero-sum economics isn't the best way to do design.
So you're raising an interesting point, and if the person controlling the question from the audience can scroll down, please. I saw a question before that was actually relevant. It's kind of like a counter argument to what you're saying. I want to hear your thoughts on that. Can you scroll down, please?
So can someone actually vote on that question so it goes up to the top?
Can you? Oh yeah. Or okay, here it is. Scroll a little bit up, just a little bit up. Not too much. No, go back up. You had the question. It was just like you scrolled too much down. A little bit more. Oh, there it is. So I guess it starts there. So someone asked, like, what's your thought on product-led protocol development? Is ERC's convention the reason we have not so many apps? Why no ERC equivalents in Web 2? Product market fit is already so hard. Why focus on standardizing product market fit? I will say that, the equivalent in Web 2, I guess, is RFCs. Yeah, but RFCs are also usually something. You don't just spin out an RFC for every like little thought that people have, right? It's like usually. Yeah, but it's like no. But I'm saying like it's an interesting question because you might even say, in a way, maybe it dilutes the meaning of an ERC or an EAP. If every random thought in one person's head, is this the way we want to like truly collaborate right from every little thought that a person has? That's I think that's
it's it's a really good question. It's actually three questions, but I think that one of the interesting things about RFPs is that they were monetized by big corporations. There was a lot of HTTP, standards.
And nobody's doing that with ERCs.
Yeah, no. That's the whole idea. So you basically, what happened, like with OAuth, for instance, is that it was created by this public standards body, and then Facebook monetized it, and it's like literally how it come to be used, really.
OIDC. I think it means OIDC more. Like, Facebook totally conquered OIDC.
Yeah. OAuth or OATC.
Yeah.
So I think that Web3 has like a lot more rapid, a lot more open, like a lot more democratic approach, and everybody can commercialize anything they want. But they like it's a much easier way to reach to the market to reach consumers. And I think that what people don't understand, the minute you start doing like product-led stuff or more like business-led stuff, and you try to think who will pay for this. Actually, that's like you don't really, especially in crypto, you don't really know what you're selling until somebody pays for it. I think it's a good rule in business in general. And I think that if you're looking at L2 saving gas cost, if we already talked about that, I don't think Ethereum is more expensive than Stripe right now. And there's some cases where businesses pay 9% payment fees, and they're happy to pay it. Maybe not happy, but they're
willing.
Yeah, they're willing, and even more than that, like they can't say anything against it because there's not a lot of alternatives. It's not like there's like a lot. Like there's 3 companies control the payments industry in North America. One of them is doing 1% of US GDP in processing. It's a data game, and it's costing a lot more than $3 billion that Ethereum collects as fees each year. It makes, let's say, I think the biggest private company or the second biggest company in the world, and there's a reason it's private. And when you realize that we almost didn't scratch the surface on those markets, whole markets untouched by crypto really yet.
I want to hear just one more person talk about, if they want to, about this whole thing, and then let's move on to maybe EAP 7702, which everybody's very happy about. So anybody else have any thoughts on this kind of like trade-off between ERC all the things or just wait until product market fit?
Yeah, I think we probably shouldn't spend too much time on this, but just to reiterate what I was saying earlier, right? Like, I think the problem is not so much that people are making ERCs. You can't really stop people from making ERCs. The problem is as a community when we as a community shame and pressure projects into prematurely embracing certain ERCs even when the best solution, the best approach has not been actually figured out, right? So I think that is the big problem, right? So I think, yeah, so that's my thought.
Maybe a tiny comment. I think this question is very much geared towards like consumer apps, and the kind of UX topics that we are discussing here, that a Web 2 user wouldn't even acknowledge these topics that we are working so hard towards. We are solving stuff like how to do cross-chain messaging or communication, or I want to have gas. And if we talk about this to a consumer app, a typical user of a consumer app, they'll be like, what? Are you guys still doing this? What's your whole industry doing? What's everyone working on? And then I think that's why comparing Web 3 to Web 2 is too nascent at the moment, but we are getting there. We are getting there. I don't want to be a cynic.
Okay, so going back to like existing EAPs. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on EAP 7702, and I know a lot of you like it, but I also would like to hear if you have any thoughts, what you don't like about it, and like what are your thoughts in general on EAP 7702?
I like the fact that core devs included, for the first time in history, a wallet EIP. That's what I like. I just don't like 7702 specifically, but it doesn't matter, like, because it's a win, right? It's a win. We got in to something, like we've been designing wallet experience around the ERCs, and we're reaching like the limit of how much user experience we can provide without touching the blockchain. And fortunately, we were able to push the core devs to get 3074. We brought back from the dead the 3074 that was like almost 3 years in silence. And then the community wasn't happy with 3074, which is fine. And then we brought back 7702 as a replacement to 3074, but it was a win. We got core devs to care about wallets. Even though if Pedro specifically wished that 7702 was different, it was a massive achievement.
I think 7702 is pretty good for EOA users who want to begin using smart accounts. At the moment, there are so many frictions. Like, if you have N asset classes in your EOA, you have to be signing like N number of signatures to port to a smart account. And God forbid if your smart account is on several chains, you might have to, deploy signers on every single chain. Maybe those smart accounts have different addresses, and the UX problems go on. Like, there's no end to it. But 7702 gives you gas sponsorship, batch transactions, permissions that enables all of this in a very seamless UX environment. And how is this going to happen? I'm not sure overnight, but maybe there's going to be network effects into it. Some wallets start doing it, other wallets catch on, some apps begin incorporating it, other apps do it. We might see some more killer use cases, which pushes the effort of migrating from an EOA to a smart account. But in general, like we at SAFE see a vision where every smart account, every EOA is a smart account, or in every on-chain account is a smart account.
Yeah, plus one there. I think like 7702 is great because we want to bring 1 billion people into this ecosystem, right? And like a lot of them have EOAs today. But I think it introduces a lot of product complexity when it comes to like supporting functionality across EOAs and smart wallets for these 7702 users. And also inherently, like a 7702 wallet has a little bit more of a risk profile than a standard 4337 wallet that I don't think users necessarily like will understand. So yeah, I think there's risk, but at the same time, it is kind of cool. Like 7702 out of the box, users get a fully self-custodial smart wallet, whereas like to do that with a lot of smart wallet implementations today, you have to add additional signers to become, get off domain-specific passkeys and things like that. So overall excited. I think there are some risks.
Yeah, I think maybe I will talk about like a very specific issue with 7702. I mean, first of all, obviously, like, I'm a huge fan of 7702. I think it's like a great thing for space, but there's like a specific implication of its design, which is that it gives the power entirely to the wallet to decide what logic the user's smart account will be running, right? So the way that 7702 works is that in order to upgrade your EOA to a smart account, you need to produce a specific type of signature, and in order to do that, you need, first of all, obviously access to the private key, which only the wallet has. But secondly, it's a special type of signing that is not available today, which means that wallets needs to explicitly implement and enable that type of signing. So the TLD of what I'm trying to say is that if I am a application and someone takes a EOA to me, right? Like someone connects to my app with a EOA, there's no way for me to really, install some kind of functionality or even suggest to install some kind of functionality to the wallet, right? So that's why the adoption of 7702 in practice will likely be very much bottlenecked by how fast the leading wallets like MetaMask and Coinbase embrace it. So even if like all the applications in the world are super hyped about just like, like using smart account features like guest sponsorship, transaction batching, transaction automation, immediately, we still all need to wait for the leading wallets like MetaMask and Coinbase to embrace it before those use cases can actually be built.
But I have a question for you. The problems that you describe about EIP 772 specific signatures and transactions, how are they any different than 4337 user operations?
Well, I mean, like right now, you don't really need the consent of MetaMask to sign a 4337 operation, right? I think like 4337, like MetaMask can already sign a 4337 user operation. MetaMask today cannot sign a 7702 upgrade. Like they literally cannot, because like the message type is different. Yeah.
But you only needed to assign the delegation, right? And then afterwards, you can actually produce a signature.
So the wallets today, they cannot produce a valid 7702 upgrade.
But that's
messages.
because it hasn't gone into production, right? Like
Sure,
7702 is not even live, guys. Like
But yeah, no. It's not just the fact that 7702 is not in production. It's the fact that even if it was in production, like you cannot just take a wallet today and then ask them to produce a message for you that can upgrade your EOA. And that's like a huge difference between 4337, right? Because with 4337, every single wallet today can already sign a user operation. But in order for them to sign a valid 7702 upgrade transaction, the wallet needs to explicitly be upgraded to support it. Yeah.
But that's because you guys deploy the smart contract on the behalf of the EOAs, right? Like, so because you do have the SDK that controls the kernel and everything, then the EOA is just a signer on your 4337 implementation specifically.
Oh, no.
So it's like the other way around, right? We're moving the smart account logic into the wallet versus living in the app. I think that's the challenge here, right? Where the wallet takes ownership over the smart account.
Sure, yeah. But I think the overall point that I'm making is just that, with 4337, since it's a, like 4337 can in a sense be adopted, without the consent of the wallet, right? Because like, I mean that's what's happening today, right? Like applications have embraced 4337, wallets have not, but with 7702, it's kind of like the other way around in that you need the wallet to explicitly support 7702 before the users can reap the benefits.
So if I can just add a little more color to that. So with this EIP, they introduced this new transaction type, type 4, right? And at the moment, like for our demo, what we did was like we pasted plain text private key to make sure that the wallet is able to grant that sign authorization transaction, which is pretty bad. But at the moment, there's no wallet out there which is like exposing this sign authorization functionality. And I feel like maybe wallets will gatekeep this. I don't know. Maybe they will monetize this functionality. Not sure. But at the moment, yeah, right now with all demos, it's like plain text private key because the only place where where private key is in the wallet. And right now, it's not exposed to the app developer at all.
I feel like that's a feature, right? Because then it gives ownership to the wallet. Like I think the problem, but maybe that's debatable, of 4337 is that it doesn't give much ownership to the wallet, which then, it can be gatekeep, as you said. And, the fact that it doesn't support type 4 transactions is just a matter of time. Like, remember 1559, like, it took a while for wallets to support it, but as soon as it hit mainnet, people supported it. So, as soon as 7702 hits mainnet, everyone is going to support type 4 transactions. But I think the problem that we're describing is not whether they support type 4 or not, is whether you have any control and the wallet essentially takes over the 7702 flow.
I can say something from the wallet builder side because I'm less involved in making those ERCs and more involved in picking them and using them. And I think when ERC 4337 was released, we've been using, we've been doing account abstraction for 5 years since the gas station network days, released services, looked at everything that moves that has to do with account abstraction. So I think looking at I want to conserve my enthusiasm about new stuff, especially adopting new stuff too early. We've been refactoring our wallet on a constant basis for the last few years, always trying to go 1 step forward, 2 steps backwards. Honestly, it's very slow because of this fragmentation of standards and things not being backwards compatible. And so I think everybody are looking for a signal. So 7702 is definitely in consensus right now, and there's hype around it. I heard yesterday from the Polygon guys. We work on Polygon. We run a CDK chain. They're going to support it natively. But I don't think that would bring a billion users to crypto. Maybe my controversial take or spicy take, I think for panels needs to be interesting. So my belief is that, maybe I'm wrong, that EOA wallets or MetaMask type of usage will reach a glass ceiling. It would not reach anywhere close to billion users. There would be a different kind of usage on top of that. And we can call it, any future ERC. Maybe it's 7702 successor or something, but we will get there.
So speaking of growth, one of the trends that I've been noticing in terms of the growth in the accounts, if you look at the numbers, are modular accounts. Okay, changing the conversation into a different topic a little bit. So as we know, there are there are basically 3 leading modular accounts way of doing stuff, which is SAFE, ERC 6900, and ERC 7579. Now, they offer a lot in terms of functionality, but they do introduce some challenges / risks in terms of security and also user experience. When you think about, you have the actual UI, but you have the model, which is usually a smart contract wallet. There are some teams that are trying to tackle this, if it's Rhinestones or other. I just kind of want to think what your thoughts are on modular accounts and those challenges.
I think modular accounts is really our bread and butter. It's kind of like the Web3 equivalent of a bank account. I think that we play with Rhinestone. They're only now released their new version to really extend wallets to places where traditional banking is usually innovating on things that you usually do with your bank, like for instance, of course, automating transactions, recurring payments, canceling a transaction, doing insurance, adding insurance on top, like basically building pull payments on top of push payments. Thinking about a lot of those problems from a fintech way of looking at them. And really trying to innovate. I think when you go to a restaurant nowadays, you basically give your password to your bank account to the waiter. There's nothing more, I would say, secure. There's no sense in the way that this is working today. So I think all the early experiments in this space are extremely risky, but they have the most potential.
How do we feel about modular accounts in 7702? Because you said that 7702 is going to open a lot of use cases. And this is the part that I feel a little disappointed with 7702, because I believe that the design of 7702 limited the actual use cases, and it's going to be pretty much just atomic batching and gas abstraction. And all of the use cases you just described were modules. I think it's what makes me really excited about modular accounts, and 7702 is not going to be able to leverage them.
You want
Oh, sorry, could you clarify like why?
Well, because
Yeah.
Tom was asking about modular accounts,
Yeah,
and we
but-
just
but-
talked about 7702.
Yeah, but why does what does 7702 have to do with limiting the modular accounts?
No, because 7702 could potentially leverage modular accounts, but it can't.
But
So-
but why can it not?
Because it's per transaction, and the EOA is always able to override any other transaction.
So with 7702, like we can for sure set the code for the EOA, and who says the code can't be 7579? So you can have an EOA that's 7702 authorized, that's authorized to a safe that's 7579 supercharged, and that means that if you're an app developer, you can plug in your own customizable modules into this 7702 EOA that's with 7579 functionality. So that's actually something that at SAFE we are experimenting with to make sure that 7702 cross 7579 is actually indeed working. If it's not, why not? But with 7579, I think to your question, like modularity, like app developers right now might feel locked in for the native modules. So for example, with SAFE, and if a developer wants to develop, they might have a glass ceiling that if SAFE offers 3 native modules, they can only build on 3. But with 7579, you break that glass ceiling. You can print, or not print, but like write your own modules and hook them into a SAFE 7579. And we actually have an adapter for that. So yeah.
Yeah, so just to clarify, on a technical level, like there's no incompatibility between 7702 and modular accounts, just because you can just delegate to a modular smart account. Yeah, but I also think the concept of modular accounts is honestly, so like this speaking as, like our company is like the co-author of 7579, but I do think like the concept of modular accounts itself is a bit overrated. I think most of the things 99% of the things that people think they need modular accounts for, they really just need session keys for, right? Like 99% of the use cases. So I think, yeah, so honestly, I feel like this whole narrative of modular smart accounts is overrated, and I think we should just be focusing on, like use cases. Yeah.
What are some examples, of some things that you think that are like the genuine use cases from modular smart accounts? Can you give some examples?
Sorry, like the question is.
So you said like 90% of the things that people think should be modular smart accounts, they could have been a session key. Yeah. So what are the things that couldn't be? Like what do you think are useful use cases for modular smart accounts?
Yeah, so I said 99%. So like I guess like the other 1% would be the other 1%. But recovery has nothing to do with modular accounts, though. I mean, what does recovery have to do with modular accounts?
Like different models for different types of recovery, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Like I
Yeah,
think
but
recovery
just
is a
set up
great
different-
example for modular accounts, because you don't have to constrain your smart account to use a specific type of recovery. You can pick and choose your different recoveries by installing different modules. In fact, the base smart contract account should be as lean as possible, and you should move as much stuff to the modules. But I do like what you said, that like some use cases that modular accounts are being promoted as can easily be like session keys or smart sessions. And I totally agree with that, because the modular accounts should be specific to account management.
I already see the T-shirt. I already see the T-shirt. This model could have been a smart session. A session.
Yes, that's really cool. Yeah. That's really cool. But I will say it again, that you mentioned this, the risk factors of the 7702. Let's take the example of like the pull payments, like you said. Like most payments are push. Pull payments can essentially be reverted by the EOA just overriding them, or you can double spend or try to double spend. And there's actually a problem that core devs ended up having, where we tried to put 7702 in the same mempool as the other EOA transactions, but because there can be conflicting transactions, they actually now have to be in separate mempools to avoid that problem. And that kind of like limits, when I meant that it's true, by spec, 7579 modules are compatible with 7702, But the way you design the modules in a 7702 context has to take into consideration that there could be an EOA that just overrides the whole thing.
There's also KYC. Like there's a lot of things like digital attestations about your account that you can't really. You really need a modular account for this. Like for instance, if I'm buying a coffee, what's the statistical possibility that I'm double spending? And you can create really clear. You know, in traditional finance, there's clearing and settlement. In blockchain, it's the same. And I think with modular accounts, we can separate it. You know, if I buy a $5 cup of coffee, the chances I'm going to double spend are very low. If I also give my credentials, if I can also be able to give some kind of a credit score, my history, if I'm solvent or not, there's a lot of attestations that I can provide on that system. I think you need a modular account for that.
So I want to double click on what Pedro just said. Like with 7702, your private key is not revoked. So ultimately, your EOA can override your delegated authorization. And while it's possible, it's slightly inconvenient to do so, but it's still possible. And use cases such as a multi-sig, resource lock, they kind of fail with 7702 because your private key can pseudo-write it, right? So the way, as a product person, the way I think it is, like you could create a specialized contract that pulls funds from your EOA into a environment of a smart account so that your multi-sigs, your resource locks can still very much hold valid in that sense.
But you're only escrowing.
But then, then you lose.
Just break the assumption.
Sorry, I'm just, what you propose is great, but the whole point of 7702 is that people keep their EOAs, and you're basically moving to another. I would love everyone to move to a smart account.
I think you're kind of underpinning the issue with 7702 in general, that your EOA lives on, as opposed to when you create a smart contract wallet, it's just whatever signing mechanism you defined in the validation there, and that is it. You don't have necessarily a seed phrase. It can be just whatever. It can be a session key in your browser, and that's it, and that's your main key. And I think that's kind of the underlying, because it depends on the user. If like the user themselves, if you don't trust them to not mess up, then, or if you want that new 7702 to be part of some sort of like multi-sig, it's a question of who do you trust here in that configuration. Do you trust the user himself or against other users in terms of what he can do?
If you go now and you spend with your credit card, you could potentially go and make a payment, like you buy yourself a new MacBook, and then you go to the bank and say, actually, I didn't pay for that. They stole my card. And now the bank has to make an assessment whether you're telling the truth or not. Because if you're lying, now I have to go pay Apple the laptop, and now the bank is taking the cost because you just lied to the bank. With 7702, you don't even need to ask for permission to the bank to pull the payment and you get a free MacBook. You just do it. You just do it yourself.
That's not always a good thing, though. I mean,
that's why. That's why I'm saying 7702 is not. It's not protecting the wallet account, you know. And then who's going to pay for that? Is it the paymaster, the bundler? Who pays for? And the resource locks completely break because of this.
It also, in a way, sorry, one second. It also, in a way, doesn't protect the user, because if my original EOA key has been compromised, I cannot cycle my key. I cannot rotate them. That's the underlying problem there, I think.
So, like with this regime of a credit card, I love that analogy. Like, how do we do under collateralized loans? Like, that's possible with resource locks, right? Like, I might not have $5,000 in my bank account to buy a new MacBook Pro, so I buy it on my credit card. Like on chain, you say you want to buy like a CryptoPunk, you might not have that number of ETH, but the seller is given the guarantee that this transaction will get fulfilled. And your CryptoPunk is essentially in a resource lock, and in case you're not able to pay back, that NFT would be removed from the resource lock and will be given back to the seller. So these kinds of use cases kind of do become possible with 7702, only when you do indeed use a smart account. And the way I see 7702 is more like a facilitator to migrate to a smart account rather than to continue to stick to something like a EOA, which is pretty poor in my opinion.
I think that that you like it's a very short-term problem we're trying to solve here. Like if like the focus is on the migration, I think what you can do with it is a different question. So right now we're really focusing on how to onboard everybody, and then when everybody are in the promised land, we can talk about credit payments, which is most of payments. We can talk about transaction reversal, insurance, recurrent payments, which is the bread and butter of Visa. You know, I think can't really say that 772 is really has anything to do with it yet.
Okay, so we only have a couple of minutes left. Sorry. So we'll start with you. I just want to hear from everybody. You know, you're in the space. You see a lot of projects. You see a lot of cool things that are getting built. Going to UX, pure UX, what are some of like, you know, really, really interesting, cool UX solutions that you guys have run across in the past couple of months that you can share maybe about?
Sure, yeah. One thing that I'm really excited about that we're building is ERC20 Paymasters because I'm excited about just general commerce using AA. So like, I think it's really powerful to have users simply use their USDC to cover the entire cost of a transaction instead of having to deal with like funding of native gas tokens. And you can build that really smoothly with like a, you know, almost a one-click experience. Really excited about that.
I just think smart sessions are a great use case for pretty much, a great tool for most use cases, I mean, because 99% of the problems are, can I actually stay in the app and not go back to the wallet? So you can just provide some policies how the app can use certain assets. You pick 2 or 3 assets and assign a spending policy for all of them. And given those 3 parameters, you basically can use the app and forget about the wallet. And that kind of reduces the amount of like switching context.
Yeah, I'm super excited about the chain abstraction work. You know, like the chain abstracted smart accounts, aka magic account work that we've been doing. Just like the ability for the smart account to spend tokens across chain seamlessly without bridging. I think that's going to be like the next big UX unlock.
So I can say that I'm excited about. Like we're seeing the first implementations of account abstraction in. I think in product a lot of times we're trying to find a signal, and since blockchain and Ethereum is like very grassroots, we see, you know, we kind of see like small signals popping up, and we're starting to get like a lot more action in Africa and Asia, and we're seeing people that are doing stuff that are not for investment. Like for instance, I don't know, there's a big inflation problem in Africa, and there's a big middle class that is starting to evolve. People start to buy phones. It's not like super hard to buy crypto there, but there's no demand to buy crypto, but there is a lot of demand to hold dollars and get exposure to dollar yield and treasury bills. And you know, this is like much bigger target audience than investors. It's the audience that wants to have like a savings product. It's a much bigger, it's a different playbook. It's a different business model. Everything is different, except under the hood, it's all using USDC and account abstraction. So I think that this is what makes me excited, and the signal I see in Asia and Africa right now. Maybe it's not, you know, mainstream yet, but good signal.
So I kind of want to break out of the echo chamber that we are in currently. And from a purely UX perspective, if you're able to spend any asset anywhere, I think that would be like the UX endgame. So like somebody was saying that if they could buy like a cup of coffee with your airline miles, pretty nice, right? Or if you could like tokenize a part of a land instead of buying the whole property, put it on rent, get some passive income. So in a nutshell, like any asset, anywhere, abstract blockchain away completely, actually make people's lives simpler, actually reduce costs of business, and deliver some value. I think that's the end game.
So I'll also finish with the two. I'm going to actually talk about applications that I saw that I think are really cool. One of them is Mina Wallet. They got a grant from us from the EF. They actually use the government ID that you get in Japan that has a built-in chip you can sign with NFC. And they basically, using account abstraction, turn that government ID into your hardware wallet, which I think is really, really cool. They did recently a demo with some elderly people somewhere, not crypto people, but completely non-tech people. And they managed to get it working really easily. And that opens up all the different things we talk about you can do with blockchain through, for normal people that just use their government ID, tap it to their phone, or to a point of sale point, and just like they're used with their credit card. And the second application is Fileverse, which is, or you know them as DDocs. They do the collaboration application here in Devcon. I'm really excited about it because I think that's, besides gaming, the first non-financial use case we're seeing, and there is value, and we're seeing this around privacy. And someone asked about privacy, and I'm sorry we didn't get to that. That's also a very important topic, but it does enable you to set the permissions on-chain and who can access your document. You own the document, you own the data on IPFS, you own your identity, and now you have all this interoperability that you can add on top that we know from blockchain for something like Google Docs, in essence, which I feel is also very, very cool. If you haven't checked out their collaboration app, I suggest you do, just to get a feel for the experience, that the onboarding is super simple, and they actually build out a really great application in terms of functionality. I want to thank you all for joining us. I think this has been really great, and I'm very happy that you were able to. So thank you all very much, and thank you